This is all about Stephen A. Smith. It has nothing to do with sports fans. It has nothing to do with what's right. It's about elevating his brand, and he's probably promising, elevate my brand, and I can promote more of this
Well,
woke, Black Lives Matter, uh, matriarchal worldview. I can do exactly what Kamala Harris is, what Taylor Swift is doing, and I can sit out there on this NFL stage and tell black men, cut your balls off, feminize yourself. ESPN's trying to come up with ways to justify paying this clown 20, $25 million a year and making him a part of the Monday Night Football broadcast as part of it. And this is, I believe, a quote from Stephen A. Smith. I don't want to insult the legacy of the great Howard Cosell, who's somebody that I idolize, but that's what I want to do. When I think about the NFL, I'm not talking about being in the booth with Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. You don't mess with that chemistry. You leave that alone. But I'm unapologetic about what I want. I would love to be a part of Monday Night Football. I would love to work with Monday Night's Countdown's new cast, including Jason Kelsey, Scott Van Pelt, Ryan Clark, and my man Marcus Spears. I mean, two of those guys are on First Take every week. Stephen, the guy knows nothing about football, and they're probably going to do this. And this is where people, oh, we're like, you're just jealous. Nah, man, this dude, I actually think Stephen A. Smith would be a great color analyst for the NBA. I think he could be the Dick Vitale of the NBA. And that's not me saying Stephen A. Smith is some great analyst of the NBA, but his brand, his personality, his passion for the NBA, it makes sense. Monday Night Football makes no sense. This is another guy slapping on these Ready Player One goggles and just like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what it makes no sense, but this is what I want to do. He's Lena Waithe playing a 300-pound black man if he's a part of the Monday Night Football broadcast. Your thoughts, Steve Kim?
the way he invoked the name of the great Howard Cosell reminds me of a line that was once said about Dan Quayle during, I think, a vice president debate. Hey, we know Howard Cosell. Stephen A., you are no Howard Cosell. Look, he's tried to interject himself into other broadcast coverage of sports that ESPN has. He fancied himself as a big fight fan. Okay, so I have a rule as a guy that's a dyed-in-the-wool old boxing scribe. When people like him say, I'm a big fight fan, that generally means, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, and maybe three other boxers. And there was a quick stretch where ESPN tried to include him in some of their boxing coverage, fell flat, didn't know enough. Where it really was bad, UFC. When Dana White brought his coverage or his property over to the network,
League.
yeah, they forced almost them to have Stephen A. Smith, and it went over like a fart in church, a loud, wet one. And there are still screenshots of the facial expressions of Joe Rogan looking at this guy going, geez, it doesn't work. And Jason, here's another critique I have of generally a lot of these shows. There's already too many people. Jason, I'm sorry. We don't need 7 people for one game, especially on a show that's not like a marathon. Like, I like the Fox crew. There's too many people. I don't want to see a desk with 8 people on there, and it looks like the line at the DMV on a Monday morning to get a word in. I don't think you need Stephen A. Smith unless you're going to kill me for this, unless you chop off at least another 2 of those guys that he mentioned and actually give Stephen A. Smith a prominent role. Because quite frankly, here's the issue, though. I don't look at him as particularly knowledgeable about the NFL as I once did about the NBA when he was on that beat.
He's not knowledgeable, and this is the exact same thing what he's seen in his agents and his handlers and the political agenda.
The last thing those guys like Marcus Spears wants is to be pushed further down the totem pole. Think about it, Jason. If it's an ensemble cast and you're certain guys, you want to get your shots in. It's like being on a great basketball team. There's only one basketball. And if you bring in another scorer, well, guess what? That's 10 extra less shots you get per game. I think secretly every one of those guys that Stephen A listed as being a great teammate, yeah, here's the issue. They may not want to add you on their team. There's egos involved here.
Steve, I got a final topic for you. It's up your alley. When I was a college football player at Ball State in the 80s, I never once looked at the point spread. It never crossed my mind to check the newspaper and see what the spread was on the game. It just wasn't a part of our conversation. As soon as I was at my 5th year of school, when I did not play college football, I started playing parlays. As soon as I was done, I can't remember the guy's name that was our bookie on campus. But anyway, I just think the gambling influence is more pervasive than is being talked about or will probably ever be talked about because the media companies are all in bed with the gambling companies.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And Jason, did you play those parlay cards? I used to play those, and I loved it at the end or the bottom. Yeah, I loved it at the end. They had it in parentheses for entertainment purposes only. Yeah, you know what the problem was? It ruined my enjoyment of the game as my 16 parlay that was going to pay me $300 for 10 blew up by 10:15 a.m. Of course, though, Jason, I am watching college football live every day on ESPN during the season. Probably the one thing that I watch on that network every day. They now have a full-blown gambling section. They actually talk about the parlays. They talk about the odds. They bring in a specific gambling guy, not an ex-player, but a guy that'll talk to you about the odds, how it's trending. So, of course, back in the olden days, Jimmy the Greek would have his big board, the odds, the check mark for the quarterback, running back, and he would always couch it. If it was a 7-point favorite, he'd always say, I think the Steelers win by 6. Now they don't even try to hide